Ready to open the hood? UseTool for the tutorials.
And for car parts, the right idea is the Mr. Auto app. Easy, fast, and with better prices than on the website.
You can find the bulk distribution kit in the video exclusively on the Mr. Auto website and in the link in the description. Turn your engine off. Pull up the handbrake. Pull on the bonnet release lever and open the bonnet. For safety reasons, we recommend unplugging the battery. Use a socket wrench and a 10mm socket to unscrew the terminal from the negative terminal. Before carrying out this operation, we recommend watching the video 10 Things to Know When Changing a Timing Belt, as well as the video How to Empty and Bleed the Coolant Fluid Circuit, since you will have to carry out both of these operations to avoid breaking the engine. In order to change the timing belt, you have to lift the front of your vehicle and remove the passenger side wheel to gain complete access. Raise the front of the vehicle and put it in the two-axle stands. We strongly suggest watching the tutorial, raising your vehicle safely, before carrying out this step. You can then remove the wheel. Don't forget to slide it under the vehicle. You're also going to have to remove the mudguard to access the accessory belt. For this operation, you have to remove the accessory belt and tension a pulley. To do this, we recommend watching our video, How to Replace the Accessory Belt Clio 4 1.5 dCi. Remove the crankcase. Using a socket wrench, a 19mm socket and a 19mm spanner, unscrew the two screws on the lower engine frame, then remove it.
Donc là, avant d'enlever la pompe à eau, il va falloir que tu purges le circuit de refroidissement. Si tu le fais pas, quand tu vas enlever la pompe à eau, tu vas t'en mettre partout, tu vas avoir du liquide plein ton garage. Du coup, on t'a créé une vidéo spécialement pour ça, il faut que tu ailles la voir. C'est comment purger ton liquide de refroidissement et surtout à la fin, quand tu auras fini ta distrib, comment réamorcer ton circuit. Si tu le fais pas, tu vas avoir des gros problèmes, tu vas avoir de l'air dans ton circuit, ça peut entraîner une surchauffe et la casse de ton moteur. Mais la vidéo, elle est nickel et tu vas tout comprendre. Et t'oublie pas, un like et surtout un petit commentaire pour dire merci.
You will first have to empty the coolant fluid circuit. To do this, get hold of adjustable pliers, remove the hose that is located under the oil filter and which is directly connected to the radiator. For more information on this step, you really should watch the video How to Drain and Purge the Coolant Fluid Circuit. Leave the liquid to flow out for a few minutes. In the engine compartment, start by removing the air inlet conduit on the air box. To do this, insert a screwdriver into the notch located on the top of the radiator, lever on the conduit, and then move it. To completely remove it, separate the electricity casing on the conduit using a flathead screwdriver. Next to the engine frame of the passenger side, disconnect the 3 diesel hoses and push them to the side to create enough space for the subsequent movements. Once unplugged, protect the hose frames with a cloth so that it's not damaged with impurities. Then remove the breather clipped onto the engine frame. For this operation, you will have to remove the passenger side engine support. You will therefore have to offset with a jack placed in support of the oil pan. You are also going to have to regularly raise and lower the engine to gain access to certain areas. For specific purposes of the video, we are using a lifting jack. Once the jack is in place, using a socket wrench and a 16mm socket, release the 4 screws from the engine frame on the engine just a little. Then, using the same tools, release the 3 screws that hold the engine frame to the chassis. You can now remove the 4 screws that were previously released. Then remove the 3 screws from the frame on the chassis. To remove the frame, start by slightly lowering the engine using a lifting jack or jack. Then, using a socket wrench and a 10mm socket, unscrew the holding screw on the air conditioning conduit so that you can extract the engine frame more easily. Remove the engine frame. Slightly lift the engine to be able to access the plastic protection more easily. Unclip the 2 holding tabs on the upper part of the protection, then open it. You can now access the 2 other tabs that you can unclip using a screwdriver. Then unclip the central screw using a long flathead screwdriver. You can now remove the plastic protection. You then need to remove the metal plate. To be able to access the different screws and remove them, adjust the height of the engine with a jack. Using a socket wrench and a 10mm socket, unscrew the 5 screws that are holding it in place. You can now remove the metallic plate, pivoting it on itself. At the wheel level, behind the damper pulley, disconnect the electric connector on the casing, which goes into the plastic cover and which protects the timing belt. Using a flathead screwdriver, unclip the casing, then pull it out of the plastic cover. Using a flathead screwdriver, unclip the holding spurt on the right-hand side of the plastic protection. Then unclip the 2 spurts on the left-hand side. Slightly lift the engine, then remove the plastic cover. It is time to set the engine. It is an extremely important stage. To do this, turn the engine so that you can get closer to the setting pins by turning the damper pulley screw using a socket wrench and an 80mm socket. Never ever turn the engine in an anti-clockwise direction. First of all, you have to put in place a timing pin on the crankshaft.
Alors là, on arrive sur une des étapes les plus importantes, c'est le calage de ta distribution. Donc déjà, premièrement, on te conseille de te munir des bonnes piges de calage. Ça coûte pas très cher et c'est super important pour réussir ta distribution. Deuxièmement, on t'explique le mieux possible comment bien faire ton calage. Il y a des petites astuces et des étapes à bien respecter. N'hésite pas à mettre un commentaire si tu as une remarque ou juste pour dire merci. Et surtout, n'oublie pas de mettre un pouce bleu et tu t'abonnes.
The right place to put it is where the setting point on the camshaft pulley, indicated by the green point, almost reaches the access hole located on the camshaft pulley, identified in red. Before setting the motor, you have to remove the covering screw, through which you will put in place the crankshaft timing pin with an E11 female Torx socket. The screw is located under the car starter. You can access both from above and below your vehicle. Slide in the crankshank timing pin and screw it in. Now, turn the engine until the crankshaft comes into contact with the timing pin in an upper position. It is at this moment that the camshaft pulley will be perfectly positioned in front of its timing pin. Insert the pin into the camshaft pulley. It can be a little difficult to insert. You will then need to remove the damper pulley. You must not use a socket wrench to unscrew it. You could lose its setting or bend the pin in the engine. Take an impact wrench, which will not cause the crankshaft to rotate. We recommend going to watch our video, How to Block the Engine Flywheel, to be able to fix the damper pulley in place more easily. We explain how to reach and block it in total safety. You can now see that the crankshaft is correctly set when the woodruff key, identified in red, is placed at 90 degrees to vertical, and that the marked point on the lower tooth of the gear, identified in green, is in the lowest position. Put the damper pulley screw back on. This will make it possible to check the settings during the subsequent movements. Adjust the height of the engine to access the tensioner pulley easily. Then, using a 13mm socket, unscrew it. Remove the tensioner pulley. You can now remove the timing belt. Using an 8mm socket, unscrew the 3 holding screws on the plastic protection that hides the water pump. Unclip the breather casing, which is attached to the plastic protection, then remove it. Using a socket wrench and an 8mm socket, unscrew the 5 holding screws on the water pump and remove it. Remove the water pump seal. On certain models, you have to pull sharply on the seal to remove it completely. In order to avoid any leaks, you have to properly clean the gasket surface and the water pump. You can use fine sandpaper to help you remove the residue of the older joint more easily.
Hello, if this video helps you, like and subscribe.
You will find the bulk, parts and products used in the video on the Mr. Auto site and in the link in the description. Take the new water pump and the seal supplied with it. If the seal supplied with it is a paper seal, generously coat the gasket surface in the paper seal for the coolant fluid in order to ensure it is perfectly watertight. Tip: put 2 screws in place on the pump. This will help you to hold the seal in position as you put it in place. Put the new water pump in place and screw it in. The screws have to be tightened in place using a Torx wrench. Then put the plastic plate back in place and screw it in. With an 8mm socket, slightly unscrew the 3 screws on the camshaft pulley, just enough so that you can pivot it around so that it is in line to be slid into place. Now, fully insert it by turning it anti-clockwise without tightening the screws. You now have to put in the new belt. Using a socket wrench, start by checking that the crankshaft is fully in contact with the timing pin. Then, take the new belt, paying careful attention to the proper direction to assemble it. The arrows on the belt have to point in a clockwise direction. To help you put the timing belt in correctly, you will see indicators on the high pressure pump pulley, the camshaft pulley and the crankshaft gear. Start to position the timing belt on the camshaft and high pressure pulley, connecting up the markers on the timing belt with those on the pulleys. Then, pass the belt over the water pump pulley. Then, take everything and position the belt on the crankshaft gear. Take the new tensioner pulley provided in the kit. Put the tensioner pulley in place, paying careful attention that the central stud is correctly put in place. Place the tensioner pulley behind the belt and screw it in by hand to start with. Once the tensioner pulley is in place, check that the markers are still aligned. You now have to check the assembly on the timing belt. To do this, put the tensioner pulley under tension in the usual upper position. Using a 6mm Allen key, put tension on the timing belt by turning it anti-clockwise . Then fix it in place with a socket wrench and a 13mm socket. Finish off the tightening with a Torx wrench. Then screw the camshaft pulley back in with a Torx wrench. Remove the crankshaft pin back in, then the one on the crankshaft pulley. Before checking the assembly, put the damper pulley back in place. You had previously disassembled it to stop the belt from moving around the pulleys during the testing. Using a socket wrench and still working in an anti-clockwise direction, make 2 full turns on the timing belt, which is the same as 1 engine cycle. This enables you to check the correct synchronization of the engine and that the setting has been done properly. The compression of the engine might make the rotation difficult. Nevertheless, check that there's no significant blockages. With each turn of the belt, the markers on the belts and those on the pulleys will shift. Do not worry about this. You should only need about 10 rotations to once again have synchronized markers. Once the 2 turns on the timing belt have been made, you now have to reset the engine. Start by putting the crankshaft pin back in. Make the engine turn until you find the top dead center point, then put the camshaft pin back in. This may still be a little difficult to do. Once set, slightly unscrew the 3 screws on the camshaft pulley. Then change the tension on the tensioner pulley. To do this, slightly unscrew it. Then reposition the arrow to the normal position with the arrow in the middle of the niche. Then screw the tensioner pulley back in and finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Screw back in the 3 screws on the camshaft pulley with a torque wrench. Remove all the setting pins, not forgetting to put back in place the covering screw. Remove the damper pulley. Put the lateral plate back in place, sliding it onto the 2 studs on the lower part, then closing the 3 upper studs. Put the casing back into the plastic cover. Then reconnect the electric connector and clip it in. Reclip the breather casing into the plastic protection. You can then put the metal plate back, then screw it back in place. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Slide on the plastic protection correctly into its housing. Then position the central screw in front of its housing with your hand and push it in using a long screwdriver. Close the 4 protection spurs. You can now put the engine frame back into its housing. Start by roughly screwing the 3 screws on the chassis side of the frame. Then adjust the height of the engine so that the screws on the engine frame can be put in easily. Now screw them in until you make contact and finish off the process using a Torx wrench. Finish off the tightening of the screws on the chassis side of the frame using a Torx wrench. You can now remove the jack or the lifting jack. Using a 10mm socket, screw the air conditioning hose back in. Clip the 3 diesel hoses back in. Put the breather back in place. Put the tensioner in place on the accessory belt before putting the damper pulley in place. This will help with the operation. We recommend installing a new damper pulley too, as well as a new screw since they're single-use retractable screws. Put the damper pulley in place. The spurt on the gear can be used as a guide to ensure it is centered. It is vital to follow the torque tightening settings on the damper pulley screw. Once the screw has been screwed in with a Torx wrench, you have to tighten it further to respect the angle indicated. For the tightening process, we recommend watching our video, How to Block the Engine Flywheel, so that you can block the damper pulley easily. We explain how to reach and block it in total safety. You can now put the drive belt in place. To learn how to properly put the drive belt in place, we recommend watching our video, How to Replace the Accessory Belt Clio 4 1.5 dCi. You can now put the mudguard back on. You can now put the lower engine frame in place. Finish off the tightening with a Torx wrench. Reconnect the cooling liquid hose that you had previously removed when draining the circuit. Before using your vehicle, you have to put the coolant fluid back in and purge the air from the circuit. You should watch the video, How to Drain and Purge Your Coolant Fluid Circuit. Put the crankcase back in. Then you can put the wheel back on your vehicle and put it back on the ground. Put the air inlet conduit back onto the airbox and reclip the electric casing. Reconnect the battery. Operation completed.
Bon là c'est le moment le plus stressant hein. Donc avant de redémarrer, tu penses bien si tu as tout fait, remis le liquide de refroidissement, bien remis tout en place au niveau de la courroie de distribution. Surtout t'oublies pas d'enlever les piches de calage. Et puis t'appuies sur le bouton et tu serres les fesses. Et... Bon, en tout cas, si cette vidéo elle t'a aidé, s'il te plaît, un pouce bleu, tu commentes la vidéo et tu t'abonnes, ça nous aiderait vachement et ça nous ferait super plaisir.